In this lecture, we're going to continue with the CIA Triad, and we're going to look at the 3 states of data. So to help us better protect against all these bad things, we need to look at the 3 states of data. We have data at rest. That's data sitting on a disk or a tape somewhere. It is not being used. Then we have data in motion. That's data that is traversing some sort of network. And then we have data in use. That is data that's actively being used on a workstation or a server. For data at rest, it needs to be always encrypted. It's just sitting there on a disk, not doing anything. It is much safer to encrypt it at all times. And we of course only encrypt what matters, what is important, but in most corporate environments, that's almost everything. How strong encryption we use on specific things depends on how critical it is. If it's the lunch menu for the cafeteria, maybe that doesn't need to be encrypted. But if it's our trade secrets or something that, if exposed, is super critical, could damage or destroy our company, well, that needs a much higher level of encryption. Let's say it's your workstation. When you get in the morning, you open the PC up, you type in your password, and then the decryption of your hard drive is automatic. If it is the super central server that has all our secrets, of course here we need better encryption, we need stronger encryption. So that is data at rest. Data in motion, that's the data we send over a network. Here, we would most often use end-to-end encryption. We still encrypt, but it's a different type of encryption, and here we do end-to-end. So from the server that sends the data to the endpoint that receives the data is encrypted. It gets decrypted at the receiving end. That's how most websites work. If you go to Amazon and you want to buy something, well then that connection is secure. It has that little padlock in the browser. Now, if it's not on the internet, it's just an internal server where you work. Again here, we want end-to-end encryption, so even if someone is able to sniff the traffic within our network, they can't get any usable information out of that. And then finally, we have the more difficult one, data in use. This is data that is actively being used by a person or a server or a system. And since we're actively using it, we can't encrypt it. Because if it's encrypted, you can't read it. So what do we do here? And in most things, it really is training and awareness. And for workstations, if it's an actual user that is using the data, then it really is having the right policies, having the right training, and raising their awareness. The policy could be, we have a clean desk policy. That means that you can have documents laying on your desk if you're not actively using the documents, and you definitely can't have them there if you're not at the desk. Clean desk. It could also be a print policy. You might print something from your workstation, you go to the printer, then you tap your ID card, and then and only then does your print come out. I have worked in places where you could print and you just send it to the printer, and many times people forget to pick their stuff up. That could be someone printing the account balance for an individual or 500 social security numbers. So in both of those places, when we had an audit, that's one of the things that they had to fix. We can also have a shoulder surfing policy. No one is allowed to stand behind you while you work where they can see your screen. Or we can have view angle protectors. That's a little film you put over your screen, and anyone not sitting right in front of the screen can't see what you're doing. We would in most places also have something where your workstation locks if it hasn't been actively used in the last 2 or 5 minutes. We probably would also have a rule that if you leave your workstation, you have to lock your PC. At some point, I switched job from working in a data center. I was the only person in the room. I never locked my PC because no one else was there. Then I moved to a bank where I was the IT manager, and now I'm in a room with 20 people. I still forget to lock my PC, and luckily they had a rule. Whenever someone doesn't lock their PC, someone goes on their account, sends an email out saying, I'm buying pizza. I think I got to around 3 rounds of pizza before I learned the lesson. I of course knew I need to lock my PC, but it's just one of those things that you forget about. I had worked for years in a data center where I was the only person. I might be on a shift and for 5 hours not see another individual. So here again, technology, processes, people. And then of course we need to make sure that our employees, whenever they access data that is important, that they use strong enough passwords, and they should really use multi-factor authentication wherever possible. And multi-factor authentication is 2 out of the 3, something you know, something you have, something you are. Type 1, 2, and 3 authentication. We will cover those in a couple of lectures. Something you know is passwords or usernames or PIN codes. Something you have is maybe an authenticator app on your phone or on a little piece of hardware. Something you are is biometrics, that's your fingerprint, your iris, anything that is unique to you. Since type 3, something you are, is more complex to implement, to get multi-factor authentication, most places use something you know and something you have. That's your username and password, and then when you type that in, you can ask for the token that's on your authenticator app. We would in all places also use access control to make sure that only the people who are supposed to be in a certain place or have access to a certain application can actually get access. We can also use need to know or least privilege. We will cover these much more in depth later, but for now, need to know. If you have a need to know something specific, then you can access the data. If you don't have a good reason that is work related, you're not allowed to access it, even if you technically could. So need to know is heavily used with role-based access control. That's where if you are a network administrator, well then you get assigned the rights of a network administrator so you can access all the routers and switches in the network, but you're only allowed to access the ones that you actually have a need to know, and maybe you can only access them from your work PC in business hours. Or you can think of it like being a doctor. You have access to every single patient file in the entire hospital, but you're not allowed just to go looking around in patient files unless you're treating that patient. And then we have least privilege. It is kind of what it sounds like. We give employees the least amount of access they need to do their job on a regular basis, and if something happens and they need more access, then we need to go in and grant them that access. Then that becomes the new least privilege. And whereas we rely heavily on need to know in role-based access control, least privilege is used in mandatory access control. And with that, we are done with the 3 states of data. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next lecture where we start on integrity.